All right, welcome to the August 2024 meetup of the Higher Education Power BI User Group. It's been a long summer. Some things have changed. Hope everyone is enjoying the start to the school year. I myself have recently just moved into a faculty role at Davidson, so no longer in the IT department, and that's brought a little adventure of its own. So I hope everyone is off to a less turbulent start to their year than I am. And I hope you enjoyed the music. That was Roxy Music, classic. If this is your first time joining us, just a reminder that the purpose of the Higher Education Power BI User Group is to train, educate, and connect data professionals who work with Microsoft Power BI and Microsoft Fabric at colleges and universities. A lot more conversations happening around Fabric these days. So we probably have some more content around that in the not too distant future. As usual, we'll go through our typical update on where we are with the latest versions of Power BI. If you're using the Power BI service, which is in the cloud, the August 2024 release just came out about a week ago. After the meeting, I will be distributing the usual post-meetup email that has a link to the blog post from Microsoft about the various features in the August release. So look forward to that and exploring some of the new stuff that we have to offer in Power BI. If you are using Power BI Report Server, the latest version for that is still May 2024. Just as a reminder, they do a release typically every 4 months for Power BI Report Server. Announcements. Our next monthly meetup is going to be September 23rd. Usually we try to do our meetups on Wednesdays, but this one's going to be on a Monday to accommodate our speakers' schedule. We are very, very fortunate to be joined by Elena Drakalewska, who is based in Vienna, Austria. And she's well known to Ben and James and myself as a sort of a UI UX expert in the world of Power BI. She's a BI consultant in Austria, as I mentioned, and she sort of made a name for herself in the last couple of years doing presentations at Power BI conferences on UX design and, more importantly, well, not more importantly, but also accessibility. So making accessible Power BI reports, which is something that we should all care about, especially if you are an institution that uses Power BI maybe out of your institutional research or institutional effectiveness departments to create publicly visible Power BI reports. You should be paying attention to accessible design principles and practices. And Elena is going to talk to us next month about how to create accessible Power BI reports for your audiences. So you will not want to miss that. I think it's going to be a great session for everyone. As I mentioned a few moments ago, after the meeting, look out for an email that's going to contain our usual links that we send out every month. The YouTube channel, the Slack workspace, forms to submit an idea for a topic or a speaker, and of course, my usual, every single month I do this, call for speakers. If you want to represent your institution and showcase some work that you've done in Power BI, we have a precedent for that. We've had multiple people from University of Miami, including Jeff, do a little presentation. We'd love to get more people in to represent your institution and get some diverse viewpoints in this higher education Power BI user group. And of course, there will be a link to RSVP for our next meeting to hear Elena's presentation. That's actually already up, and you are able to RSVP on our meetup site. So please do so. Love to get as many people as we can in to support Elena during her presentation. Now, without further ado, we're not going to do any more administrative stuff. We're going to go straight to the main event for today, which is Ben Ferry, aka Power BI guy, not the Power BI guy, but Power BI guy, because apparently there are multiple people calling themselves some variation of Power BI guy out there. But Ben was the first, I think. Ben's very well known in the Power BI community. I certainly came across his content a few years ago when he was doing a lot of writing about Deneb, which is a custom visual in Power BI. Deneb is probably, in my opinion, is the best way to create truly custom visuals in Power BI using a JSON-like syntax. So Ben's pretty well known for doing work, well, I mean, really all over the place when it comes to Power BI, but I certainly got to know him through his work on Deneb. And he's going to be talking to us today about how your report is boring and nobody cares. So this is going to be sort of continuing, I think, a theme of some of the what we've been talking about in recent months about user interface and user experience design in Power BI, how to create effective reports. So with that, Ben, I am going to stop sharing and let you take it away, my friend.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction there. I'll start off by saying one first of hello. Thank you very much for allowing me to talk here today. Share my screen. Let me know if it's all working. Works, correct? Yeah, cool.
Yes.
Power BI guy is an interesting one because I literally just changed the name of my channel 2 days ago. I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues, and I've been sick of being called Power BI guy for a long time. And I was catching up with a colleague, and he just wanted to say in passing, I'm looking forward to hearing some of your fairy tales, as in a pun for fairy tales. And I was like, that's it. So now it's Power BI fairy tales is the name of my channel. So there you go. No longer Power BI guy. Anyway, that's not what you're here for. Yeah, so my presentation is called Your Report Looks Boring and Nobody Cares. It's a bit of a clickbaity title, perhaps, designed that way, so it got accepted at conferences. It worked, to be fair, so I stand by that decision. And yeah, well, I'm going to dive into it. I'll do a quick about me section first. I know you're not here to learn about me. There is a QR code if you would want to scan that. Yeah, so I'm a senior BI consultant at a university called the Internationale Hochschule, which is in Germany. That's why it has that German name. It's very confusing to me that it's called IU, but it's an abbreviation from the Internationale Hochschule, which is not started, doesn't start with a U, but International University is our international. We have also universities in Canada, in the UK, so this is where I've been working for just over a year now. I have 7 years experience working with Power BI. It's been a fun 7 years, frustrating sometimes, but it's been a fun journey for sure. As I said, Power BI Fairy Tales, the new channel name. So there you go. If you want to find me, you can find me. Power BI Guy was also like the most unfindable name on YouTube, by the way, because it's Power BI and I call Guy, Power BI Guy, and you got Guy in a Cube who works. So I was just nestled within like 10,000 Guy in a Cube videos. So hopefully that'll help. I used to, but will again start to do YouTube live streams. I do videos, hopefully more frequently now, as Pete said about Deneb, which is a way to create bespoke visualizations. I'm not going to include any Deneb stuff today. It's a little bit too intense. So this is all just about non-Deneb visualization. And I think the most important thing about this slide I really would take away, I'm an accidental data viz enthusiast. So I'm intentionally leaving out the word expert because I'm not. I once got introduced as an expert and I was quick to correct that. I enjoy it. I like to learn about it. And that's also kind of, so you know, there are things in this presentation you might disagree with. Feel free to be vocal about your disagreements. That's perfectly fine. It's always nice to have a conversation about these things. So yeah, I'm not sure how it usually goes, but if there are any questions, I'm fine to ask questions, like answer questions proactively, I should say. So just let me know. Thank you for liking the new name, Hannah. It means a lot to me. So let's go. So what's the point of this session? So if there's one takeaway, so I can tell you the point of the session at the start, and then you can just drift off if you want. It's about clear insights before beauty. That's what I'm trying to get across. And you see, I have a what's it called again? A peacock. And I have a goldfish. Now, my peacock is this representation of data viz peacocking, as I like to call it. The beauty for the sake of beauty, something that wows, which perhaps doesn't add a great deal of value. And I was thinking to myself, what could be the opposite of the peacock? Not an ugly animal like those kind of bald and blind moles, but rather something that's kind of okay. It sits there, does its thing. It's non-offensive. And I thought of the goldfish, which is not an ugly animal. It's very clear to see what it is. It's orange, and I'm kind of like orange anyway. So these are my two visual representations. I have a goldfish, which is kind of boring, does its thing, and a peacock, which is wildly extravagant. And I'm thinking that the clear insights should come before beauty. That's basically what I'm trying to get across. And in the next slide, I'm going to kind of lead you through the process to where this whole presentation idea came from. It was kind of inspired by a LinkedIn post, to be honest. You see these reports posted on LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. This is where it came from. So I hope what makes sense in my head also makes sense in your head. Be fun to find out. So here we are. We have this line, okay? So on the far left, we have a report which is ugly, okay? So in my view, an ugly report is just hard to read. And I'll give you a quick example. I kind of pre-prepared an ugly report. It was this. Oops, that's me trying to understand American temperature. I apologize. So it's 35 degrees here today. It's why I'm like very, very pink. Or 95 to you. So this is, I kind of pre-prepared this ugly report, okay? Now, I've seen uglier, but I've seen, whatever. This is a report where there are too many visual elements. There are colors. No, I'm sure it's fine, Hannah. There are too many colors. The colors don't mean anything. We have things that shouldn't be there. It's just a bit messy. I'm not saying this is the ugliest thing in the world, but that's where my head is when I think of ugly reports, just so you know where I'm talking about, okay? So in my opinion, an ugly report is hard to read because there are things that distract you from the data itself. It's not clear. Yeah, we haven't made any attempt to make decisions or think about how things should look. A boring report is easier to read because there aren't these visual distractions. We have made conscious choices. We haven't gone very far to make extravagant, but it's easier to read. Yeah. And then I went another step further. And this is just my thought process. I'm just thinking, is a report that's beautiful, is it necessarily easier to read? And when I think now, I haven't prepared a beautiful report because I don't think I'm capable of doing it. And that also, I think the point of this entire presentation would kind of be defeated if I presented a beautiful report, right? But if you think of a very sleek report with elements that exist for the beautification of it all, like icons and sleek design patterns and all that type of stuff. But is it easier to read? And is it easier to extract the data, which is the core purpose of a report, from a beautiful report? So obviously I'm biased and I think it isn't, but I'm posing the question to you. You could disagree. An elegant report would be beautiful and easy to read. True, we'll come on to that. But my question is it easier to read than a boring report? Is it easier to extract the data? I'm not saying a beautiful report is not easy to read, but how much easier? Like, does the effort outweigh what you're putting in? And just so you know, I was presenting this once, and one person said, I disagree, and I'm a graphic designer, and I can do this. And that's cool. If you're a graphic designer, I'm not saying you shouldn't make that attempt, but a lot of people who build reports are not graphic designers. A lot of people who build reports are people who are building reports in Power BI. Yeah. So if you have that skill set, I'm jealous. Yeah. But this is where I'm coming from. So I took this line, and then I made it more of a circle. Why did I make it a circle? So an ugly report is easy to make. We make almost no design choices. We click on things. The report kind of appears as we click on things. We don't think about how things should look. We just drag and drop, and then the report kind of comes into creation. A boring report, I would say, is harder to make because you do have to make design choices. Yeah. A boring report, basically, it's hard to make because you have to think about where things are going to go. You're not going so far to this extremely beautification side, but you're making design choices. And I would say a beautiful report is very difficult to make because not only do you have to make those design choices, but I do believe it's almost impossible to make because our perception of beauty completely varies. Like I can see a report that someone has created and they've put in a lot of effort. I see the effort, but I don't see it to be perhaps beautiful because again, what I find important or what I find to be beautiful is different. So I would also say that it's very difficult, almost impossible to create a universally agreed upon beautiful report. And on top of that, if you get a beautiful report wrong, and this is why I've gone from a line to a circle, I would say that if you get the beautiful report wrong, it's closer to ugly again. Because all those design choices, all those elements that you've done, they become clutter because they don't work so well together. And yeah, it kind of goes too far, and it just becomes a distraction from what we want from the report, which is the data. Yeah. Hope thus far it's making sense to you all. I'm trying to read the comments as I present, by the way. It's not my forte. So if you have asked a question and I miss it, I do apologize. So feel free to bring it to my attention somehow. Water because of the heat. So where we're going to go from here. Exactly. So if you have an ugly report, in my opinion, everybody cares. Why? Because it's hard to read. Yeah. An ugly report, everyone's going to care because they're going to be distracted from all of the ugliness. They can't see the data, and it's just widely all over the place. If you have a beautiful report, there might be some people who appreciate that, extra effort and agree with the design decisions that you've made. Some people might care, but a lot of people won't. A lot of people won't care about those extra steps that you've done to make this report one that is considered more beautiful. But if you have a boring report, which is perhaps visually unspectacular, no one's going to care as long as they can actually see the data and read the data and get to their analysis. Again, if you can do all these things, again, I'm not trying to say you should never attempt to create anything that looks good, but I think there's too much of a focus made on sleek, sophisticated, amazing designs. Again, things that we'll see on Instagram, not Instagram, LinkedIn, for example, where I did this course and I learned how to do that, and it's just too much sometimes. So this is where I'm coming from. That at the end of the day, your report looks boring and nobody cares. That was what led me to creating this this presentation, which led me onto this, which is are the clear insights the beauty itself? You know, like if I'm a report reader, what to me, if beauty is a question that we have to something that we have to contemplate, is it not the clear insights which are the beauty? Everything else is just, you know, the peacock. See, I've come back to the peacock, went full circle there. So that's the concept of what I'm talking about. And now I want to look at the challenges and of course that we face using Power BI or in data viz in general, and then also go over some key concepts of data visualization and how to keep it clean and whatnot. Yeah, putting reports on Instagram, good point. So where are we? Cool. So what are our challenges? Of course, there are lots of challenges. I just kind of thought of like what I consider to be the top challenges here. So my first challenge, in my opinion, is this perhaps quite an outdated quote or concept, but it's always in the back of my mind, this 5 minutes to wow. Now, I'm not sure anyone in the group has heard of this 5 minutes to wow. I'm sure one or two of you have. If you haven't, I'll click and I'll show you, hopefully if it works. There you go, indeed it does. And this is a link to a old 2016, my lord, 2016 article for Microsoft. And the concept is basically what you can see here, that Power BI was quick, easy, and free. Quick and easy, should we say. 5 minutes to sign up, 5 minutes to wow, which is to imply that within 5 minutes you can sign up. That could well be true. 5 minutes to wow. That always kind of irked me a little bit because obviously the definitions of wow change, but it kind of gives this impression that within 5 minutes you can create a report with insights that looks good and it can be done. So it kind of makes the expectations, it imbalances the expectations. Now, obviously, I don't disagree with that at all. 5 minutes is nothing. Yeah. So yeah, I would more rather say than 5 minutes to wow, there's still so much left to do because you can't do anything in 5 minutes from Power BI at all. The next one is clicky, clicky, draggy, droppy, which was chat GPT, and they're like, yeah, you still can't do it in 5 minutes. You can write your prompt in 5 minutes, maybe. Clicky, clicky, draggy, droppy. This is a phrase that was coined by, oh, I forgot the name. That's really bad. If someone remembers the name, help me out.
Was it one of the
Chris.
guys from Guy in a Cube?
No, it was just no, it was a. It doesn't matter. It was a Microsoft guy. I forget his name. I apologize for that. I should write it in my notes, but oops, basically. But I'm not making it up. You said it. I promise. And it was the concept of you can just click and drag and drop and you create a report. So what I want to do at this point is to kind of just jump to my other screen and then test our concept of clicky, clicky, draggy, droppy. Okay. Let's see if I can clicky, clicky, draggy, droppy and create a visualization. So I want to create a visualization where I've got my round and I've got my total points per game week. The data is all fantasy football or fantasy soccer data, by the way. Doesn't matter. So I've got a visual and I want to make it a bar chart. I'm going to do this. So I want to call that clicky, clicky, draggy, droppy because I've clicked and clicked and I've dragged a little bit and let's say I've dropped. But then I need to do other things to create this visual, which is to say I want to sort out my axes, all this type of stuff. So I'm going to go, okay. And I'm going to try and attempt to count my clicks. All right. So I'm going to go, I want to sort my axes, for example. So what I do here, I want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, that's cool. But I want to switch off the titles because they make no sense. I forget what I was up to. Let's just say 8. I can't remember. 9. And then let's go, 10, 11. And then I want to switch on my data labels because I need data labels. 12, 13. So let's just say to get a decent visualization, I've got like 13 clicks. Now I know you can, improve all this by putting in a template file, whatever they're called again. Yeah, exactly. The theme file, not template file. Thank you. A theme file. But the point is to create, even with a theme file, you still have to do a lot of work to get a visualization to look, I would say, okay. Yeah. So again, instead of clicky, clicky, draggy, droppy, my opinion is very much something closer to that. This is how we create visuals in Power BI. And there's your 5 minutes right there from one, Yeah. The third one is not Power BI specific. Data visualization is not easy. There are many things you have to take into account. Elena will probably go into deeper detail about that when she does her presentation, but it's not easy. There's lots of things you have to consider, what you want to show, how you want to show it, the target audience, all this sort of stuff. It's not easy. Power BI, though, I think doesn't make data visualization easy. A lot of people refer to Power BI as a data visualization tool. I think Power BI data visualization is one of the things that it does. And I also think it is the thing that it does the worst, to be honest. So it's a data visualization tool, but I think though it's moving in a direction, it's still a long way to go, especially if you consider even the new visualizations created by Miguel Myers, which are a lot better. All those new visualizations, there are even more clicks involved, in my opinion. So it's quite extreme. It's a powerful tool. Little knowledge or guidance, it can lead to errors. I think that's self-explanatory. You can do a lot with it. It is powerful. But if you don't have that guidance in place, it's very easy to make those errors. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like if you look at the first reports that everyone makes, they're pretty horrific. I mean, you got to learn from it, but it's important to kind of have some guidance as you learn. And the final one is overcompensation. And I like to use that an example of myself here. So I live in Germany, so I speak English and German. But if you're in a situation where I want to say, Christian Wade, thank you, Pete. My Lord, it was Christian Wade who said that. If I want to say something in German, sometimes because my German is okay, but not as fluent as a native speaker, I have to say maybe 3 sentences where 1 sentence would have sufficed, yeah? Because I need to explain around the concept. And sometimes that's really cool. Like I had a friend once who she was trying to say the word puddle in English. And she forgot the word puddle. So she called it a tiny lake made of rain, which I just thought was actually very beautiful. It was like very poetic. But you overcompensate, but you use too many words, or sometimes you use the wrong words. Another one of my favorite examples is my wife, who's Italian. She forgot the word for skyscraper. And what did she say? She said, itchy sky, which I love, but it was the wrong words to use, and you had to kind of work out where you were going with it. So sometimes you overcompensate where your knowledge doesn't fit in. So these are the things what I would say are our main challenges. Yeah. So from here, I want to speak about, want to do a demo, but the demo is going to be based on concepts and some ideas that I've kind of got from other people, proper data visualization experts. Okay. So the next section, or the first section, you can say, Ben, I don't believe you because that's just your opinion. I don't care. But the next section, I'm backing up with quotes from people who know what they're talking about. So hopefully that there's less disagreement. We shall see, though. So, color me beautiful. I've tried to Americanize this with scratching out the U there. Hope you appreciate that. So, the quote: when used with purpose, color tells a story and brings clarity to your data. But when used without consideration, color can work against you. If I share these slides, I'm not sure if we usually do that. There are links to all these quotes so you can see the articles on and whoever. So basically, I love the quote because it very, very concisely says that data is good, color is good, but only if you use it in a precise way, if you consider how you want to use it and how you can highlight certain things. So to kind of demonstrate that, I'm going to move to my other screen and we'll have a look. So I'm going to switch files at this point. Here we are. Cool. So here I have obviously a very standard bar chart. I do kind of like using a matte black, and that's just a me thing. But basically, what I want to do is just to use a small amount of color to indicate the highest value. Yeah. Now to do that, that will of course immediately brings your eye and your attention to one particular column. So if I were to go to the next tab along, you can see I've done that here. Now we can see that the highest is yellow. And to do that, you don't need to use DAX or anything. You can do that with DAX, but let's just kind of keep this a entire conversation DAX free because I can get pretty intense pretty fast. So if I want to do that, I can simply go to this. I go to my bar chart, column chart, excuse me, my column chart. And I'm just going to say, okay, I want the color. I want the color, instead of be black, I'm going to do a conditional formatting. And on the conditional formatting, I want to say, I don't want gradient. Yeah. So based on a, if total points per game week, yeah, equals 100%, then yellow. There you go. So by doing that simple thing with no DAX or anything, now you can see that the highest value is this yellow. Now I know we don't have a legend when we do it that way, which is why here in the subtitle we can say highest scoring week indicated by a yellow column. The point is here simply to say that you don't need to use color unless you actually want to indicate something with that color. Like, what are you trying to show? What message are you trying to convey with the use of a color? And if I just quickly spring back to this other report, here you have situation. And this is not an exaggeration. I mean, you see this all the time. Like this, I literally saw today. I was having a conversation with someone about not needing to have a color on the categories. And they said, well, how am I meant to show what the category is? Now, well, the category is displayed already by the axes, that sort of thing. Now, you don't need color unless you're actually trying to draw attention to something or indicate something, which is what I'm doing here. You can also do the same thing, but with a minimum value. So again, if I go back to my columns and I go this, I can then also add a new rule and I can say if the value equals 0%, then I don't know, let's pick another random color for the sake of it. Then okay. So now I have the minimum, the maximum, and you can see that pretty quickly. Yeah, there you go. So color 2. So I'm doing something here which I usually don't recommend. right? I'm breaking my own rule. I really don't like having visualizations stacked on top of visualizations. It irks me. And if I were to do this using Deneb, I would not need to stack, but I don't want to stand here and live code in front of you or scare you with all the things that Deneb can do. It gets a little bit intense. So I'm going to stack a visual, but I'm allowing myself, because this is just literally a yellow rectangle. Yeah, it's nothing. It's just a yellow rectangle. And what's it for? What I want to do also is have another visual, which is basically showing me this here. So this is fantasy football data, which means what I want to do, what I would love to find is any player who hasn't been selected by many managers. So this is a selected percentage by managers. Yeah. Who hasn't been selected by many managers, but scores lots of points. Because of course, if you're not selected by many managers, score lots of points, I'm going to get those points. They're not going to get those points. So this yellow then represents my sweet spot. Yeah, this is where I want things to be. All right. So this is why I've allowed myself to stack a visual in this situation, simply because I think it adds value and it's not a particularly bad stack, if you will. I'm just indicating a value. So again, I'm using the same color because I always want to use that yellow because I want to draw attention, let's just say, to the best, to keep it basic. Yeah. And finally, this is actually just me putting in a bar chart. I've got not much to say about that. So this is just a small example of how using color precisely and in a limited way can allow you to create a report that's kind of clean, is not going to win any Viz of the Week or Viz of the Month awards, that is sure. But again, when I create visuals, when I create reports, I really expect that to happen because, I like to create clean visuals, and I know to do that sort of thing, it's a skill set that I personally don't have. Yeah. So this is color. I'm going to go back to the slides. I'm going to go on to our next quote. Use your words. So don't be afraid to use words to explain your visuals. And this is something that I actually only started doing quite recently. And I honestly think for me, it's been one of the most helpful things I've started to do in my reports. Anthony Unwin says graphics on their own are insufficient. They are part of a whole. They complement text and are complemented by text. So basically, you should use words to explain what you're trying to visualize. Especially for me, if you have a very wide user group. When you create a report, quite often you're creating a report with a feedback from or with a specific stakeholder or a small group of stakeholders in mind. And they aren't always aware of the decisions that have been made and what you're actually attempting to do with the report. And I think my examples that I'm using today, using the fantasy football data, is actually a decent example of that, because I know the data, I know what I'm looking for. And people who play fantasy football also know what I'm looking for. But if you see the report for the first time, it's quite unclear, right? So if I go back to this report, and I said before, I've got this yellow square. That's fine. I know what it means. But if someone looks at this for the first time, they're going to be like, what's this yellow square about? So I can use text to explain that. So what I'm starting to do is actually tell people what the point of this report page is, what I'm actually trying to achieve. So I'm just saying, use this page to find players who have scored most points, but are selected by a low percentage of managers. The closer the player is to the yellow box on the scatter plot, the better. This indicates they score highly, but are selected by fewer managers. Now, perhaps I could have said that more concisely. The more you get to know me, the more you understand that speaking in a concise way, perhaps is not my strength. Okay. So I understand that also translates to when I write things as well. But I think adding that type of text to a report immediately indicates or helps people understand what you're trying to achieve. This yellow thing here, perhaps it would be better to explain it actually closer to the yellow box, because there's a bit of distance between this and this. So there's a bit of a disconnect. But putting that information in somewhere putting that information in, maybe here or to the left of the visual, or perhaps in the subtitle might be a better choice, but certainly using the words to explain what you're trying to do is going to make your report easy to use. And sometimes, to be honest, as report developers, what we are trying to achieve is creating a report that's useful, but also creating a report that's going to be useful, help people make decisions, and also is going to let people ask us questions a lot less, right? Because if we create a report and people ask us questions about it all the time, it takes up our time and it might indicate that things just aren't that clear. Yeah. Again, especially with a wide user group. I know like universities might have that challenge more than other companies. I'm not sure. I know that I never had reports that were read by so many people until I worked for the university, because you have much wider user groups from different departments, and you have also, I mean, we have our lecturers and our graders reading the reports as well, which sometimes can really make it a much broader group. So, more words. What I've also done is here, I've actually said, I've told them what to do with this. Now it's easy to read it. Everyone kind of understands a bar or a column chart, right? You look at it, values are big, good, usually. Values are low, bad. But you can also use them. You have interaction, which a lot of people actually don't know about. It's surprising sometimes the amount of people who don't understand there is interaction in a report. But also, what value does it bring to make it interact? So I've just simply said, use this visual across filter and show the values of the other visuals by selected round. And what I've found interesting about that, not only to give people that information, is when you start to do it, I kind of started to see like, so the highest score in game week is when there are 4 players in our sweet, 4 or 5, 5 players in our sweet spot here. And actually it happens relatively often. So it allows you to see what's going on week by week. Now, excuse me. I know we know this. I know that we understand that how to click on reports and how to make them filter. But sometimes it's nice to kind of show people what the value actually is on clicking things and what's going to happen when you do that sort of thing. Are there any questions thus far about this, or any vociferous disagreements? None. That makes me feel so good. Maybe just all wait until the end. So, what I'm going to do now. So, this next one is my favorite quote. I hope you will enjoy it too. So, explore the vertical. And this is by Jeff Goldblum in an episode of Friends. It's got nothing to do with data visualization. Now, if you've watched Friends 10,000 times like I have, you might remember which episode this is. It's the one where Joey's kind of like auditioning and he really needs the toilet. And it's Jeff Goldblum's in it. Yeah. And he starts to dance and stuff, you know. But what Jeff Goldblum was trying to say is that, you know, your acting is too horizontal. Explore the vertical. Doesn't really mean anything, but I'm using it because I actually want to try and make a point here. So ditch the 1080. What do I mean by ditch the 1080? So it always, not always, it became increasingly interesting to me, the number of Power BI reports that have the same, I believe it's called aspect ratio, right? It's like 16:9. Yeah. Aspect ratio, I think it's correct. And even when people change that, which I do myself, they always make it 1080 by 1920, which means your report sits nicely on a screen. Yeah, there's nothing outside that. That's it. But if you look at other report building tools, something like Tableau, quite often the aspect ratio of the reports is different. Now, I understand it's a different thing because quite often what you're doing is you're creating not a business report, but rather you're creating an infographic or something. You know, it's a different way of looking at stuff. But I started to think, how bad would it be if we just sometimes didn't do that? Now, this is probably the most controversial thing I'm going to say. but I stand by what I'm going to say because I think sometimes it does work out. There are certain things you have to take into consideration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the Power BI report and I'm going to show you a report page that doesn't just fit in the screen. Hope it doesn't upset you too much. So here we go. Oops, what just happened? Try again. Oh, there you go. So there we go. So that's what I've done. My report page, you can now scroll on it. Now there's nothing there. I understand that. So I'm going to fix that. Okay. I'm just leading you into it. I don't want to shock you too much. So I now have a report page, which was exactly like this one. Only difference is I can scroll up and down a little bit. What I'm going to do in that, I'm going to put in, Uppsala. What's happening? Okay, sorry. By the way, I keep saying Uppsala. It's a very German thing to say. I'm sorry. It just sticks in my head. So the first thing I've done, which I missed there, I've added another text box to this one. Scroll down to see a matrix showing all players and the points scored by round. That indicates to the user who might not be used to a report that does something so crazy, like scrolls down, that you can actually scroll down in this report and you will find some more stuff. And that's what I've done. So one benefit, and the reason I've chosen this visual is because report builders, we tend to not like to put tables or matrices in our reports. It upsets us. Power BI is not Excel, we say. So don't make me do it. But what I used to do, because, back in the days when functionalities like this were fancy and clever and it was fun because you could do stuff like create a button, a bookmark. So when you click on it, like the table just appears on the report screen and you click another button, disappears. And that's a fun thing to do. But you develop that report and then you leave the company or you move on to a new role and someone else has to take over the report. And they legally have to immediately hate you for building a report that has loads of bookmark functionalities that they have to maintain and update. And it's just generally, it can get out of hand too quickly. Yeah. So I can hide the stuff. I mean, I'm saying hide the stuff. It's like a half job, right? You can put some valuable stuff down there as well. It allows you to have a slightly deeper dive into the data without having to navigate to a different page, which I personally think can be very beneficial sometimes because whilst I do love functionality such as drill through, I think sometimes if you start to drill through, if you start to navigate through report pages, you can quite quickly lose track of where you were, lose track of what your flow of the data, if you will. So one thing I do understand, and this is an important thing to consider, if I start to cross-filter, what I like about this is then, of course, I can see it here, I can see the maximum, but I have this data here in my table as well. But what I can't do is then see it up at the top as well. So if you have a situation where the visual that you have here does need a lot of interaction or you have to scroll up, that's not a great design choice. You have to click and scroll and click and scroll. If you are going to implement this as a functionality or just do it in your reports, you do have to consider that element of cross-filtering and what you want to see and what can you see when you add this visual element as well. I personally really enjoy it. I mean, you can also do the same thing. So if, for example, you wanted to have the same functionality here, which is to say, highlight the top whatever with yellow, you can of course add that as well. So you're bringing the same visual style, the same color reasons and color choices into those visuals as well. But yeah, I've done this a couple of times and the feedback was somewhat positive. I was relieved to say, to be honest, but I understand it's not it's not for everyone, but I do think it brings a lot of value. And I think the strange thing about it is and when I first came up with this idea, I'm not claiming that, this is, trademark my idea, but when I first thought of this, the feedback I got from someone is that they didn't like it because they didn't feel that scrolling was intuitive. So usually I'm very open to criticism and feedback and stuff, and I am in this case as well for sure. But I didn't agree with that, to be honest, because I can't think of an experience of anything that we use online where we consume information that literally doesn't involve scrolling. I think scrolling is one of the most intuitive things that we've kind of been we've just learned to live with, to learn to deal with. It's the same with zooming in on photographs. You know, you can, like, I actually hold a physical photograph sometimes in my hand, and my first thought is to zoom in on it. I'm not, this is crazy, but because you just get so used to it. It happened to me yesterday. Looking at a photograph of like in the 90s, and my wife tried to just finger and zoom in on it. It's crazy. But I think it's just as intuitive. It's just scroll. You see a scroll bar, you scroll. So I think it is pretty easy to deal with. But because we put this text box here, which has an arrow anyway, it makes it easier to understand what's kind of going on. And as I said before, you can add this yellow element here, so you can see now much clearer what are the highest scoring game weeks for each person by round. So now we've gone through this very basic information. So that person here, top total points, you can use this, of course, to do that as well, to kind of see what they got per week. And you can use this to see also in which week there was a lot here, which is our sweet spot. And if you scroll down, you can do a deeper dive, shall we say, to see each person and their top game weeks. So we're getting there. It's actually a good point about vertical and horizontal scrolling. Yeah, I do agree what James is saying, that basically to scroll horizontally, it's not as intuitive, and because you don't have to do it as often. And that's the same also with when creating a visualization. So if I have, for example, a visual where I have to scroll up and down, like this one here, if this was a much higher visual, if you will. So if I were to, I think it just says top 10, or top 20. So let's take this off. I'm okay with having to scroll up and down in the visual like that. This is, again, would rather not, but it's quite okay. But what I really don't like is having to scroll left and right. So if this goes up to 1 to 36, if I had to scroll left and right to go 1 to 36, that would irritate me. So like if this visual was then like that, I don't like that at all, but I'm fine with this. And I think that kind of plays into what James is saying, that the scrolling horizontally and vertically are two kind of different user experiences. Yeah. Cool. All righty. Back to the slides. So this is the last one. So I hope everyone's doing okay. Jump to it through faster. I hope I'm not running out of time. Not sure which one. So it's a pie chart. Get over it. My God. How many blog posts have you read or LinkedIn posts about a pie chart's good or bad? I made a video about it just on those days when you kind of run out of ideas of what content to create. It's like, it's clickbait, isn't it? So Alberto Cairo, if Alberto Cairo says it, I'm standing by it. Okay, there are no bad graphical forms. Boo, indeed. Whether a simple pie chart, a complex non-linear graph, or a strange-looking cartogram, each form can be ideal depending on the data and the audience. So I've said it's a pie chart, get over it, because I just want to make it a little bit, inspiring some kind of people going boo or whatever, or disagreeing with me. But what I'm talking about is data visualization in general. I've had this conversation like this week with my boss, because one of the reports that I had, it did actually have, well, it was a donut chart, not a pie chart. Though not my favorite choice, I compromised with the stakeholder and I put it in one pie chart, because they did originally want like 30 of them, which was just. So as long as the visualization that you're showing is right for the job, then don't worry too much about it. Is it the most effective way of showing that data? Then it's fine. If a pie chart has two categories, like we all said like 10,000 times, some people say three categories, but I'm saying two, it's fine to use. And I'm saying that because, oops, got ahead of myself there. Because the final thing we're going to do there, I'm going to put in a pie chart just to upset you all, right? So here, the final thing I've done, I've added a donut chart. So I put that in for two reasons. I do think that in this situation, using that visualization is a perfectly fine way of showing that. So if you don't want to have a pie chart, you could put in, of course, exactly a Jeff Cock. Thank you for that beautiful example. If you wanted to put in a bar chart, then you could feel free. Of course, you could do so. The interesting thing about pie charts is, of course, what it's the data labels, right? Because it gives you the percentage without you having to do a percentage calculation. And honestly, I think what we lose track of sometimes is that whilst there are some people who are report builders, and that's kind of like their profession, that's really what they're focused on, there are some people who like just build reports because they have to, and they don't really consider it the absolute thing that their job is, you know? So in that situation, as long as you're not going crazy and creating a pie chart that Jeff Cock just posted before that, let's just calm down. You've got data, you've shown it effectively. We can see very easily that this is over 54%. We see, we can have our title, we can have our number, we can have our percent. There's really, really no issue with that, in my opinion. And I should have prepared this in advance, and I didn't, which was foolish of me. So if I then go to this and I go to my, hopefully this works. I wanted to show you like the finished version of this report. Oh, look at all this mess in my workspace. Shameful it is. So that's the ugly one. That's the pie chart one. There you go. So this is the final version of this report, and all the elements that you see in it already on. You haven't changed anything. I just clicked the publish button, right? Is this report ugly? I would say not. If you disagree, that's fine. I might cry a little bit, but it's okay. It's not wildly beautiful. It is what it is. It displays data in a way which I think is very readable. If someone clicked publish on this report and presented it to me, I would be perfectly happy with that. I think what they've done is create a report that conveys data and contains no fanciness. It doesn't contain anything that is designed to visually wow you, but it does contain elements that kind of help you lead you along your data journey and gets you where you want to be. That is, as I said at the start, the overall message that I'm trying to get across in this presentation. And I'm ending with this, which I revealed too early. What are you going to do? That perhaps, given all those things, that the goldfish is greater than the peacock, because the goldfish is simple, easy to see, and stands out and doesn't try to distract you with elements that are, let's say, unnecessary and distract you from your data. And that is my final slide. And I thank you very much for listening, pay attention, and I welcome any questions, criticisms, boos, or someone standing behind me with a bell that says shame. All those things are acceptable.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ben. That was excellent. Truly, truly excellent. And there's been some
Thank you so
really
much.
great conversation happening in the chat as well. Probably some of the best conversation we've ever had in the chat during one of our
Cool.
meetings. I will invite people, if they want to ask Ben a question, to hit the little button down at the bottom where you can raise your hand. Should see it down there. Raise your hand if you have a question, or put the
Mm.
question in the chat. Looks like Yassine has already put a question in there. How
Mm.
to highlight cells in a table or matrix.
Oh, is this what I was doing? Yeah, on that final page. One second, let me share my screen again. It's pretty similar to what we did before. Share. So where was I? Not this. Are you referring to this? I believe you're referring to this where I've highlighted specific cells. Yeah?
You're still looking at your slide deck right now.
Oh no, I've shared wrong. Brought shame upon myself. So, PowerPoint screen one. So screen one should do it. Yeah. Can you see Power BI now?
Yes.
Score. So How to do that? Actually I can't remember. Oh my Lord, it's so bad. So I go to my cell elements, background color. Yeah, okay. So I did that with DAX. I cheated. Okay, so it's a points rank. Um, yeah, so it's a top N. I don't like
Mhm.
showing people my DAX because it's my DAX, right? So you do need to use DAX for this, to be honest. Maybe there's a way where you can do it in the same way I did in the bar chart, but not that I'm aware of. But it's not overly complex DAX. Some people don't like rank X, but it works pretty well. So that's how you do it.
Yeah.
I could copy and paste that somewhere if you want, or take a screenshot, whatever works for you. But yeah, that's how you do it.
So we have one question. Do you think that there's an optimal aspect ratio for a
So
report?
that
Yeah, that requires a lot of vertical scrolling.
that's a really good question, and I'm pleased you asked it because when I was on that slide, I had a brief pause because I knew there was something I forgot to say. And it was that I would say optimal, no. In my opinion, again, has to be just my opinion because I can't, there's no rules here. I wouldn't create something that you scroll down and there's more than one extra scroll length, right? So I would like one page that you can see and then maybe another of the same size underneath. I wouldn't start creating something where you can scroll and scroll and scroll. I also am not with this saying you should start create report pages with this function, with this feature, so you can like, oh yes, I can now put on 35 visuals on one page. Like, no, that's obviously, from a performance perspective, not good. You should still keep it as minimal as possible, which is why when I did it, I only added those two visuals, which is the table and of course the pie donut chart that you all loved so much. So optimal, no, but I would just say logically, as you saw mine, it wasn't even double the page. It was just kind of that and 50% more. So I would say maximum double and then leave it at that. Yeah.
All right, great. Do you have any other questions for Ben?
Anything else? Challenge me. How,
Yeah,
how to,
another
how to
question from Yassine.
how to control table options to download data.
Oh, so
Oh,
that
not
could
for
be
the
done
reviewer.
with that can be done with
Hmm.
the header options on your visual. If you go into PBI desktop,
Yep.
you go to format options, you should see under, I think it is the general settings, you have the ability to configure what options are available
Yeah.
for a given visual. And it's things like, if you're in a matrix visual, you can control whether or not the user has the ability to drill down in a hierarchy,
Mm,
things like that. But you can also control very fine-grained permissions like should we allow them to export the data, or do we even want to make the options menu
mm,
visible at all? That could all
yeah.
be configured at the visual level.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of visuals, there are ways to actually apply using scripting. You can apply that setting to all of the visuals in your report. Um, Pretty sure that has to be done in Tabular Editor, perhaps, or one of the
Mm.
other adjacent programs. I'm not sure, Ben, if you know, but yeah, there are ways to control that.
Yeah, no, to be honest, for that sort of thing would allow users to access the data. For what I actually tend to do, to be honest, is I switch off all the visual headers, because I hate them. And then I encourage users to, if they want to access the data, they want to see like, then actually just connect to it via Excel. The analyze an Excel option actually to connect through Excel. You can also, I think it's good as a report developer to set up a file like that that's already connected to the data as well. That allows people just to see the data within Excel and create tables that way. I know it's not what you were asking, but it's just kind of an extension of what
Mhm.
Pete answered already. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else for me? I'm here to
Yeah.
be grilled.
Slightly past our time, but we still have time for more questions if anyone
No,
has any last minute things.
cool. All
Okay.
good. Not gonna force it. Ask
All right,
questions.
yeah. Well, Ben, thank you. The reception to your talk looks extremely positive down in the
Wonderful.
chat.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
this has got to be one of the best presentations we've had. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I enjoyed
Um,
it. I enjoyed it a lot.
and everyone check out Power BI Fairy Tales on YouTube.
Exactly. It's you can be the first of my new subscribers to
Yeah,
the new Power BI fairy tales.
absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well,
Cool.
thank you, everyone. And reminder that our next meetup is in September. We will have Elena Drakulevska talking about accessibility and Power BI report design. And I hope to see you there. Take care, everyone.
Thanks everyone. Goodbye.